I have 10 trade packages for the Boston Celtics. I'm sitting in Brad Stevens' chair today, and we're going to start off with some of the more realistic trade packages that involve Jrue Holiday, Porzingis, Sam Hauser. Then as the video goes on, we'll get a bit more unrealistic that involves trades for Jaylen Brown. The only players that I deem untouchable right now, Jason Tatum, of course, Derek White, I don't think is necessarily untouchable. If a team does send multiple unprotected first round picks and possibly a young player, he could be dealt. And Peyton Pritchard seems unlikely to be moved. He's making $9 million a year, just won sixth man of the year, one of their best shot creators, one of their best 3-point shooters. I don't think he's going to be on the move. And then some other guys, Luke Cornett, Al Horford, they're free agents. Kada doesn't really have trade value. So we'll start with the first trade. Again, I'm trying to do this realistic to start, or at least realistic in my eyes, and then more unrealistic as the video goes on. But the first trade here, Porzingis goes to the Orlando Magic. In return, Boston gets KCP and his, $22 million contract, Goga Bitadze, who's making $8 million, Corey Joseph, and the 25th overall pick in this upcoming draft. I'm going to explain both sides for all of these, but to just get the Porzingis side out of the way, because we're going to have more Porzingis trades here in the future, the Celtics have to get off his number. $30 million, 1 year left. Does not seem like they're in a scenario where they want to extend him going forward. They're going to try to get under that second apron. And once they do get under that second apron, then a lot more trade possibilities does open up because you can aggregate salaries. You could send future draft picks that are frozen right now. All of these trades I'm doing are under the impression that the Celtics are under the second apron. I'm not doing like, oh, we traded Porzingis, now we're under the second apron. We could do different trade packages for Jrue Holiday. All of these trades are with the second apron in mind. So again, for Boston, get off Porzingis' number under the second apron. Hasn't been able to stay healthy, unfortunately, these last two playoff runs, or really these last two seasons in general. And it'll be interesting to see what his trade value really is around the league because you have two sides of Porzingis. You have that side where he is shown in Boston to be one of the most efficient post players in the league, one of the biggest mismatches in the league, one of the best rim protectors in the league, and one of the best 3-point shooting bigs in the league. All of that is true about Porzingis. The other side is he can't stay healthy. And in these two playoffs with Boston, where he has desperately been needed, he hasn't showed up outside of a game in the NBA Finals. So for a contender, you're taking on a real risk for a guy that is expiring. So you don't have to do a whole lot of commit a ton to him. But he's also someone that you really can't rely on. For the Magic, the KCP contract is looking like a bit of a disaster. So I think Boston tries to take him in as a reclamation project, get his 3-point shooting confidence back. We know he could still defend. And then a couple of just, bench guys like Corey Joseph and Goga Bitadze, who I know Magic fans love. I know they love Goga, and the 25th overall pick. I think this makes sense for both sides. The Magic get a 3-point shooter that they desperately need. They get an upgrade at the 5 over a guy like Wendell Carter Jr. Of course, the injuries are a concern, but you really aren't trading much for him, right? A couple of rotational guys. You're, of course, keeping your big three, and you're adding someone who could really improve the upside of this Magic team. Moving on to the next trade here. This one is Jrue Holiday, and I mentioned this in a previous video, but to just bring it up again, Jrue Holiday going to the Dallas Mavericks for Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington, and Dwight Powell just to make the money work. This is another trade that I think makes sense for both sides. We are recording, thank God. Jrue Holiday still has value to me. I know the contract, 3 years, $32 million per season. It could be alarming. And Jrue Holiday is 35, going on 36 years old. But he's still one of the best defenders, period, in the NBA. Or one of the best defenders in the NBA, period. Wouldn't it make sense to have two periods there? He's still one of the best to do it. He could shut down opposing guards. He can guard centers. He could still be a quality 3-point shooter. And these last two playoffs, I think he's been pretty damn good for Boston, especially the 2024 run where, he was arguably our third best player, sometimes our second best player when you look at those Pacers and Mavericks series. He was just awesome. And for Dallas, you have a bit of a logjam when it comes to your center position, just front court in general, right? You have Gafford and Lively. You have PJ Washington, and you're going to draft Cooper Flagg, who is probably more of a 4 than a 3 long term. So you move off Gafford, PJ Washington. Both of these guys will be expiring in 2026. And you bring in Jrue Holiday. That defensive lineup that you could possibly put out there when Kyrie's healthy, who is not a slouch defensively, he gives effort, but it's him. You have, of course, Jrue Holiday now, Cooper Flagg, Derek Lively. This is a real deal contender. And Anthony Davis, who I didn't even mention. That's a true championship level team for Daniel Gafford, who is probably the long-term backup for them, and PJ Washington, who's a solid player, don't get me wrong, but he's a role player. Like when I go through that lineup, he's probably your sixth most important player, fifth most important player. So you move out both of them, you get Jrue Holiday, who's a big upgrade at the guard position. And for Boston, you get a real rim protecting vertical threat in Daniel Gafford, who's just 26 years old. I think that's a really good, return for Jrue Holiday, who is aging a bit. PJ Washington is someone who's going to bring intensity. He's going to bring defense. He could bring some three-point shooting depending on the day. And then Dwight Powell just has to make money work. He probably won't be a long-term answer for Boston. But Gafford and Washington are two guys that in the 2025-6 season will be contributors and probably starters. So if you do have to move off of Jrue Holiday, which seems very likely, again, get under that second apron, I think this trade is probably my favorite out of the bunch. But moving on here, a smaller trade. This one involves Sam Hauser going to the Brooklyn Nets. So when I look at the Nets, they have, I want to say, 5 draft picks in the 2025 draft. They have a ton of future draft picks, and they already have some young players on their roster. So can the Nets potentially want to look to move back in the draft, right? They already have picks, in the lottery. Could they potentially want to move back to pick up Sam Hauser, who is on, in my opinion, a great contract, $10 million over the next 4 years to be one of the best shooters in the NBA? Sam Hauser, in his life, has never shot under 40% from three dating back to high school. This is one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. And 2 years ago, he was a good defender. Last year, he was dealing with a bit of a back injury, so the defense did take a bit of a step back. But in this trade, Sam Hauser and pick 28 going to Brooklyn for pick 19. So they move back 9 slots in the NBA draft. They pick up an excellent three-point shooter. And Boston, who has picked 28 and 32, do you have to include both of them to move up? Maybe. I think this is a trade that makes sense for both sides. Again, Boston getting under that second apron. It's $10 million for Sam Hauser, but the real impact in terms of luxury bill is like $80 million to have Sam Hauser on this team. I love Sam. He's a great shooter. He's not worth paying $80 million for to this new ownership group. So you move up 9 spots in the draft. You get a better prospect at 19 than you would at 28. And you lose Sam Hauser, who's been awesome. But again, this is a guy that's probably your 7th or 8th man for Boston. But for Brooklyn, could be one of your best shooters and could help space out the floor as you try to build and rebuild this team with a bunch of young players. Moving on, we have another Porzingis trade. This time, I'd hate to see it, but going to the Los Angeles Lakers. This one's easy. Rui Hachimura, Jared Vanderbilt, and a future first-round pick for Porzingis. Can you get a future first for KP? I don't know. Maybe this is probably a lottery protected pick that maybe turns into seconds down the road. But I don't know if just Rui and Vando is enough for Porzingis. I'm sure Celtics fans would say this is horrible, and I'm sure Lakers fans would say this is horrible. But again, the Lakers need a big desperately. And this is a big that can be in the pick and roll with Luka. He can catch lobs, he could protect the rim, and he could be a three-point shooter. So this fit here with Los Angeles feels perfect. Again, though, the injuries, right? You already have a team that's an aging LeBron James who has shown to pick up injuries over the last couple of years. Luka Doncic just had a couple nagging injuries the last couple of years. And of course, Porzingis. But to give up just Rui and Vando, a guy that in the playoffs you're probably not even playing a ton, it's a pretty decent deal to get Porzingis, who has all the upside in the world like we discussed. And for the Celtics, Rui Hachimura is expiring after the 26th season. He is still a younger player that has shown upside. Vando, 3 years, $11 million per year left on that contract. Don't love it, but you get a future first round pick that you could either use when that time comes or potentially in a trade package the following year. Moving on, another Porzingis trade. We will get to the Jaylen Brown trades in a little bit, but I want to get through these Porzingis ones and Jrue Holiday ones. This one would shock me. And again, as we get later into the video, the trades are going to get less realistic. So for this trade, Porzingis goes to the Golden State Warriors, who are looking at their roster, and it's aging, and they still want to compete with Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler. But they need a switch in this roster somehow. They'd be giving up Draymond Green. They'd be giving up AirPods, Guy Santos, and maybe draft capital. Or are they not willing to give up draft capital because they're giving up Pods, who's one of their better younger players, and Draymond? I don't know. And this area had a lottery protected pick, or excuse me, no, a 2031 first round pick swap with the Celtics. The Celtics getting the better of the 2 picks. Why does it make sense for Golden State? Golden State's time in the sun is obviously over. This is not a team that's going to go in a dynasty anytime soon. They really need to capitalize on the window they have right now. And you can make the argument that's with having Draymond on the court. That's with having Draymond, who's one of the best defenders in the NBA. The other argument is Draymond Green, who's approaching his mid 30s, is in his mid 30s. At what point does the fall off happen, right? I know he's not the super athletic guy where he has to rely on youth and, quickness and agility to be this awesome defender. His IQ and his strength goes a lot of way, and he still obviously can slide his feet. This is potential to move off Draymond Green where he still has value. And you get Porzingis, who, like I said in all of the other trade packages, the upside is there. The upside is there with Porzingis. He spaces the floor, rim protects, everything I mentioned already. I don't know if I really ever see this happening. I can't imagine Draymond in another jersey, but I'm going through teams. I'm trying to find packages I don't see elsewhere. The money works. I think it makes sense for Boston to get a young player in AirPods and a future first round pick. And it wouldn't surprise me if Draymond Green even got rerouted because I don't know if Boston's really going all in for a 2026 championship. Moving on, some Jaylen Brown trades. I got like 4 here. And I'll say this. I don't want to move off Jaylen Brown. I don't think they'll move off Jaylen Brown either. When I was listening to Brad Stevens' press conference a couple of days ago, first of all, no real takeaways. Brad does an excellent job when it comes to just talking to the media and not giving anything away. He was asked about Jaylen Brown. He was like, I trust Jaylen Brown. I think if he's a starting guy in 2020, he didn't even say if, he said, I have all the faith in him in 2026 as the lead guy. So it seems unlikely they trade Jaylen Brown. With that being said, as a second apron team as we stand, it is a lot easier to trade Jaylen Brown and get a package back you like compared to a Jrue Holiday and a Porzingis trade. Again, Jaylen Brown has more value than those guys, so obviously, but $53 million worth of salary is what Jaylen Brown's going to have on the books next year. You could bring up salaries up to that $53 million mark, so you could bring in some real talent. Unlike Jrue Holiday and Porzingis, who make around $30 million, it's a lot harder to find guys that can be long-term or even really short-term solutions in the next couple of years with those salaries. So the first Jaylen Brown trade package I have is with the Indiana Pacers. This is assuming the Pacers lose and probably the ECF, maybe the finals if it goes a little nasty. But if they just want to shake up their squad and say, we want to have a real, third option or maybe second option on this team. We have Hallie, we have Siakam. Let's get a guy that could play the 2 or the 3 next to these guys. He fits seamlessly. He defends. He would fit into this system. The package is a decent amount. You're giving up Andrew Nembhard, Obi Toppin, Aaron Nesmith, and Jarris Walker. Those are the 4 players you would have to give up to make the money work. And these are players that I know Pacers fans love. These are players that, candidly, I love. I love Andrew Nembhard. He hasn't been great in the regular season, but back-to-back years has been awesome in these playoffs. It's nice that he's the second best player on the court. Jarris Walker has a bit of untapped potential, but he's shown some flashes. Aaron Nesmith going back to Boston would be pretty funny. This is a guy that has shown to develop throughout these, 2 or 3 years in Indiana, has developed a great three-point shot. He's always been an awesome defender. The defense has been getting better. And then Obi Toppin, who's been an awesome bench piece for Indiana. These guys are making all under $18 million per year. Nembhard's making 18, Obi 14, Aaron 11, and Jarris Walker $6.5 million. So all these contracts are super team friendly and super movable. And do you have to give up anything more than that if you're the Pacers? A potential first round pick in the future? Jaylen Brown is another guy that the trade value is a bit hard to find because of the contract. And for this Indiana team who is super young, I understand them wanting to just run it back for another year, especially because you just made another ECF and potentially the finals. But again, this probably only happens is if they lose in the ECF or they just get embarrassed in the finals in 4 or 5 games. Moving on, another Jaylen Brown trade. The 76ers call up the Celtics. They made deals in the past. They made deals involving, actually, this pick right here, the number 3 overall pick, and Paul George go to the Celtics for Jaylen Brown. Now, there's a lot to break down here. Number 1, the 76ers already publicly said they're shopping number 3. And I think this draft gets looked at as kind of the top 2 guys when it comes to Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper. And then it's everybody else. And I'm not a draft expert by any means, but the number 3 overall pick is going to be incredibly valuable, whether that's Ace Bailey, Edgecombe, Trey Johnson. There is a ton of guys in this draft that Boston can be looking at that can contribute right away, but is also going to be making, $40 million less than what Jaylen Brown makes. With that being said, you're taking on Paul George's $52 million contract over the next 3 years. So you are taking 1 year off in terms of Jaylen Brown has four left, Paul George has three left. But goddamn, Paul George looked awful last season. And do you believe in him being able to bounce back and have a bit of a revival in Boston with a team that's going to be more competitive? But you're trading Jaylen Brown. And if you trade him and Paul George is your best player next year with Derek White, that team is pretty bad. That's a potential lottery team. That's a play-in team more likely than a top six seed. Would Brad be willing to take on that contract? Getting the number three overall pick would be awesome. But is it worth taking on Paul George and giving off Jaylen Brown? It's a trade I think is unlikely, but I think is something that's probably getting discussed within the Celtics front office. Moving on. Another Jaylen Brown trade. I think we have three more Jaylen Brown trades. Again, don't want to move him. Just a lot easier to move him than Jrue and KP. Jaylen Brown goes to Memphis for Ja Morant and John Conchar. Am I crazy? Am I insane? I actually saw this. It was on Jason Timt Hoops Tonight. I'm sorry, I forgot the producer's name, but his producer is a Celtics fan. And they were going through trade packages and said, what about Ja Morant? And I was like, you know what? Probably not, but let's just see what it is. And the money is super easy. Jaylen Brown for Ja Morant and John Conchar. What side are the picks on? Are there picks involved? I feel like it's more likely that Boston would have to include picks to get Ja just because he's a younger player, probably viewed with more upside, viewed as more of a number one as compared to Jaylen Brown's number two. So if we talk about this for a second, why does it make sense for Boston? Number one, you're getting a younger player, right? Ja Morant is 2 or 3 years younger than Jaylen Brown at this point. You're getting a true point guard on this team, which you haven't had since Kemba Walker. I mean, Marcus Smart, Derek White, Jrue Holiday. None of these guys are really point guards. They're more twos that are forced to play the one. And more than anything, Jason Tatum is really the number one on this team, the point guard that facilitates everything. But you get Ja Morant, who, when you look into next season, okay, a team with Ja Morant, Derek White, you keep Pritchard, some of these guys. Like, this is a team that I have a lot more confidence in being a top six seed than if you went and got a guy like Paul George. He would fit in this offense. He's someone that can attack downhill. He can, take on double teams, pass to open shooters in the corners and on the wings. I would not be mad at all if I was Boston to get Ja Morant. The only downside is defensively, he becomes a liability, right? Boston has really prided itself throughout these last 3-4 seasons that we're going to have five guys on the court, and you're not going to really be able to take advantage of anybody. They try to take advantage of Payton Pritchard, but Pritchard is super pesky, uses his hands well. They try to take advantage of Sam Hauser. Hauser's 6'7", and he has some decent size and length to him. So although he gets attacked, he's not someone that I'm looking at as saying, like, that's a complete mismatch. He has to get played off the court. Ja Morant can have those tendencies. And, of course, offensively, the three-point shooting is a problem, and there were just stretches last year where he just looked terrible, finishing around the rim. The mid-range did get better, but really that three-point shot can be concerning. Why did the Grizzlies do this? The Grizzlies could be looking at Ja Morant and said, listen, last season we changed the offense completely, right? We changed the offense, and our team was better with the offense changed, but Ja Morant got worse, right? We did not see as many pick and rolls from this last year's Memphis team. Of course, they fired Taylor Jenkins towards the end of the season. They lose in the first round, and they could be trying to shake up this core. Now, what does this lineup look like right next season? It's Scottie Pippen probably goes in the starting lineup. You have Bane, you have Jaylen Brown now, Jaren Jackson, and Zach Edey. It's an interesting lineup. Do you get better from this trade? It's hard to say. My first gut instinct is probably not, but you become a better defensive team with Jaylen Brown there instead of Ja Morant. I would question just a little bit the playmaking when you lose Ja, who's an awesome playmaker, can give you like 9 assists any given season. But this is a trade that I think maybe both sides could look at saying Ja Morant needs a new change of scenery, and Jaylen Brown, we would love to keep you, but for all the reasons I've said before, there is a real chance he could get moved. Moving on. Another Jaylen Brown trade. We've got 2 left. This time going to the Detroit Pistons for Tobias Harris, Simone Fontecchio, Jaden Ivey, and a couple of picks. So in this world, I had 2027 and 2029 first round picks. This is all about how you view Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey last season showed before the injury that, holy shit, maybe he can be a true number 2 for this Detroit team. Of course, they invested high draft capital on him. My only really, stop or reason for hesitation is Detroit just went to 6 games against the Knicks who are in the ECF right now. This is a team that nobody expected to be good. this is a team that doesn't really have any long-term commitment in terms of salary. Like Tobias Harris after the 26 season is off the books, and they're not really paying anybody outside of Tobias Harris and of course Cade Cunningham. That being said, Jaden Ivey is a potential free agent, restricted in 2026. So what happens if next season he has another injury-riddled season or he's inconsistent? Are you going to pay up for him to be that number two, or would you rather capitalize on his value where can it get higher? Of course, like Jaden Ivey's a young player, has a ton of upside, but there's also a world where over the next couple of seasons his value kind of stays the same, and this Jaylen Brown player isn't available, or this package isn't available, where you're giving up Tobias and Ivey, who are kind of two guys that, or at least Tobias, in a couple of years to see a real contributor on this team. Of course, a couple of future draft picks, but you're not giving up 5 first-round picks. You're giving up a solid young player, 2 first-round picks, and some salary filler for Jaylen Brown, who is a Finals MVP. I feel like I'm trying to sell it to the Pistons at this point. Again, Jaden Ivey's a player that, if I'm the Pistons, I don't really want to be moving off of. Can I find a way to get Jaylen Brown without giving up Ivey? That would be the dream. But I don't know if there's a real package there without Ivey, unless it includes, 3 to 4 first round picks unprotected for Jaylen Brown. Last trade package, another Jaylen Brown trade. In this trade, the Houston Rockets acquire Jaylen Brown and the 19th overall pick from the Brooklyn Nets. It's a 3-team trade, I didn't say so. So the Rockets get Jaylen Brown, the 19th pick from the Nets. The Celtics get Dillon Brooks, Jabari Smith, pick 10, and a future first-round pick. The Nets get Reed Sheppard, Jock Landale, and Jrue Holiday to make the salary work. Where do we start? Let's start from the Celtics side. Dillon Brooks is more salary filler, $21 million. Again, somebody that's going to play for you in the 25-26 season. He's going to be a contributor on a team that will probably make the playoffs. Jabari Smith is somebody that I'm super high on. I know he was taken top 3, top 4 pick. Maybe he hasn't reached that level, but I think he's shown that he could be a super valuable player, role player that is, to a contending team. He's pretty awesome for the Rockets, I thought, throughout this season. Of course, he's not the guy like a lot of people predicted him to be, but he's somebody I think as like a 4th option potentially on a team with his size, with his versatility, with his shooting potential. You really have some upside there with Jabari Smith. And the 10th overall pick would be another player that can contribute right away. So I think for the Celtics, you're getting younger, you're getting off salary. Dillon Brooks is a free agent at the end of the 27 season. Get a couple young players and a future draft pick. I think that makes all of the sense. For the Rockets, you're taking that next step, right? If Devin Booker or Kevin Durant don't work out, where's your pivot? Are you going to go into the next season just saying, we're going to run it back with the same squad of guys? Or are we going to try to go out there and get somebody who can be maybe not number one, because I do question what Jaylen Brown looks like as like a true number one as an initiator consistently, but somebody who is your best offensive player overnight when you acquire Jaylen Brown. And you have some insane athletes in defense now with him and Amen Thompson. Şengün is still there, of course, and you don't really break up much of your core. I know Reed Sheppard is also involved in this deal, and we'll talk about the Nets in a second. I don't know how to view Reed Sheppard. I think you used a super high draft pick on him last year. He didn't really get much playing time at all this year, but when he did get playing time, he was pretty awesome. Is he somebody that's expendable, though, if you go and get an all-NBA player like Jaylen Brown, potentially? So in the grand scheme of things, this is what Houston is actually giving up. They're giving up Jabari Smith, Dillon Brooks, Reed Sheppard, and the 10th overall pick. And I'm not really including Jock Landale or Jrue Holiday in this case. Like, they're throw-ins for salary. So those are really the 3 players you're giving up. Dillon Brooks, Jabari Smith, Reed Sheppard, 2 first-round picks. Is that worth it for Jaylen Brown, or is that a trade package you're looking for an more upper echelon guy, whether that's a Devin Booker, Giannis, whatever the case might be? But in this case, you don't give up Şengün. You don't give up Amen Thompson, who feels like untouchable. You still have the Fred contract you could flip. You still have the Jalen Green contract you can flip. So you're giving up a lot of valuable assets here, but you're not giving up your most valuable assets. You're giving up some of the guys that are making less money. And of course, some draft picks that are always going to be valuable. But those are my TED trade packages. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you have any other trade ideas for the Boston Celtics. It's going to be a very busy summer. Appreciate you guys watching. Talk to you next time.